I am Nadia Hassan, and I'm an artist and designer. So I cannot remember a time when I wasn't making or drawing or doing something. I mean, like all kids, I think, engage in those activities, but for some kids, like they find other interests or they branch off. But for me, like my earliest memories are of making or being engaged in some kind of artistic activity. And so that process has always been a part of my life. And I think that the process itself is what ultimately led me to a career in the arts and to being engaged with it. I don't remember any one thing in particular. No one in my life ever discouraged me from, like, certainly my creativity was encouraged. It was, but it also not in any kind of over the top way. I was in any kind of prodigy or something where someone's like, oh yeah, this kid, she's going places. But yeah, like my parents were certainly encouraging, and other family members were encouraging of it. But um, I didn't, I don't ever remember like wanting to be an artist. That wasn't, I had a long list of things I wanted to be, and an artist somehow was not on that list. And when I got to college, I think I was a chemistry major, and I thought maybe I would go into nutrition or something that was more sciencey. And after one semester of having, being sort of away from art and not having that in my life in a significant way, like I felt that void so deeply, and like I instantly kind of knew, I was like, no, that's what I have to do. Although that was kind of, I didn't really know what that meant because I had not really thought of it up until that point. And but you know, I switched my major to design and just kind of, you know, took all the classes that one takes when that's your major. And um, I think I just was like, I'll figure it out. Like it was important enough to me as a thing that I was doing. I was like, well, I will figure out what, you know, what a career looks like or how I would support myself. Like, but yeah, which was kind of a yeah, that was. I'm glad I did that. I don't know if that was. I think that seems a bit naive, I suppose. But again, like it, I think when you are determined enough to make something work, when it's that meaningful to you, when you can't escape it, no matter how hard you try to be a chemistry major, then you know it's there's something to it. I was my class valedictorian. Like I always excelled in school, and I think even for myself, I thought I would do something more intellectual or more. I don't know, more. I don't want to say prestigious, but like I don't know. Art just really didn't. I didn't take it seriously. Like I didn't. I think I didn't even, sometimes I still don't even fully appreciate the possibilities that are there. But yeah, and there were a lot of happy accidents, I suppose, that led to where I am now. But it was also, you know, a sort of fierce determination that it's like I will do this or I will die. Like this is going to happen. But again, like I don't know that at the time I was thinking of it in those terms, but sort of looking back, I can see like, you know, just an absolute dogged sort of persistence to get myself to where I am today, wherever that is, wherever it is that I am. You know, it's a place I'm very glad and feel very privileged to be. But yeah, it's hard work, and so everyone's always like, you know, how do you do this? And I'm like, don't, trust me, just like don't, you don't want to do this, or if you do, um, yeah, if you're asking me how to do this, you're in the wrong spot already. Like, no, I'm kidding, and I do encourage people to have art in their life in some capacity, but to make it your life, you know, I feel like you kind of know on some level if that's for you or not. Um, oh man, again, sort of along with, it's hard for me to answer questions about background or about influences because sometimes I think I'm just so immersed in the process itself that I'm just like, oh, I don't know, like, yeah, like there are obviously influences, but I think sometimes it's just happening at such an intuitive, like it feels so natural that I don't stop to think about what and when. I do know that color is like probably the biggest driving force in the work that I make. I feel like everything I do is really just a vehicle for playing with color, and that excites me and delights me, and I could do it forever. And I have this suspicion that like I built a career that like centered completely around allowing myself to just play with color all day every day and how it interacts. And I really couldn't explain why it's such a um, like I don't know why that's the case. I just know that it is. And so color and playing with it and looking at it, like that drives my work. It drives pretty much everything I do. And I think it led me to patterns, because patterns are a very obvious place to put color into action. And so then that just kind of became this sort of cycle or feedback loop where like I loved patterns because they allowed me to play with color, and then so on and so forth. So I just kind of built this love around those two things. And again, like I'm sure there are more concrete influences I could point to, but sometimes I do feel like I have a really difficult time like knowing exactly what they are. Um, so I think other people are really good at pointing that out, and I'm just like, oh yeah, you're probably right. But like I don't see it. I'm like blind to that. It's very strange. I'm not a storyteller. I don't work in narrative in a representational kind of way, like in a way that most people are familiar with. And I've stopped trying to force that to be part of what I do because it's just not. It doesn't come naturally to me. Like it's just I don't feel like I'm a storyteller in any kind of conventional way. But you know, I have this deep love for and like sort of ability to work with color in a way that I think not everybody has. And so I've just been like, okay, that's a thing, that's valid. Like that's not nothing. But yeah, like people don't enter into a lot of aspects of anything that I do. Everything's like 1 degree removed. It seems like from uh, concrete relationships or sort of concrete storytelling. Uh, but yeah, like that's just how I relate to things. I like that abstraction. I like that space, that distance to process things and leave. I think there's just more room for possibility in that, and I like that. I like that openness, and I like that kind of. It never quite fully gets pinned down. Although I do love other people's work. Who it's very personal. It's very narrative. It's very concrete. It's talking about one thing or one idea, or it's talking about relationships, and it has that human like very obvious human aspect. I enjoy work like that. I just don't, it's not what I make. And I think I'm okay with that now. Whereas before, you know, I've had some experiences that I think tried to push one as being better than the other or one as being more valid. And I flat out reject that type of thinking or that type of, yeah. So my relationship to Greensboro did not start out as a voluntary one. This is simply where I grew up. You know, like I grew up north of here in Rockingham County, and um, I worked in Greensboro at my family's restaurant at Gassan's when I was in high school, and I have other family here. So it's just been a place that I've been in and around for my entire life. I went to UNC Greensboro, and was very happy with the education that I got there. But I graduated in 2007, right as the economy is beginning to take this steep nosedive into this sort of free fall into insanity and chaos that lasted for many years. But I got a design job right before things just completely fell off the map. And in those economic conditions, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I had a job in a field that I wanted to work in, and I was not about to, you know, I was younger, much younger at that time, and I do think I wanted to not be here. I wanted to go other places and do other things and see other places. But you know, I got a job here, and I was very grateful for it. And eventually, I realized that what I think a lot of people, if they're smart, come to realize, which is that you always take yourself with you, and whatever you may be running away from or running towards, like you can't find that in a different place if you don't address that like within yourself and sort of know who you are and have a sense of who you are in relation to the space around you or the place around you. So I think just by virtue of, again, I wouldn't say I was stuck here, but like circumstances kind of led me to stay longer than maybe I would have if the choice had been mine. And then I don't know, I just kind of began to really appreciate Greensboro in a way that I hadn't before. I think it's easy to take Greensboro for granted. I think it's easy to see it as boring or, you know, it's not boring, but there's a subtlety to it. There's a comfort here. It's like it's very comfortable. I've come to see it as like it's a Goldilocks situation for me. There's nothing that I want or need that I cannot easily get here. That's me personally. That's maybe not true for everyone, but for me personally, you know, there's nothing that I need or want that I cannot easily get in this city. And then if I need more excitement or if I need the beach or the mountains, if I need to go elsewhere pre-pandemic, that was easy enough. Living here is affordable. It has a nice pace. And as someone who regardless of where I live. I could be in New York City, I will still spend 80% of my time indoors working. Um, but yeah, that's kind of a rambling way just to say that the internet also has helped me to be able to say that Greensboro works well for me. It's not a design mecca by any means, but that doesn't matter anymore because none of my clients are local right this minute. They're all scattered about. So, and sometimes I do have like I'm working with people locally, but for now, everyone I'm working with is elsewhere. And so yeah, like the internet has helped designers and artists, I think, be able to work wherever they would like to be versus feeling like they have to be in LA or New York or a big city that and those cities are, you know, remarkable and wonderful places to visit and to soak in, but that's too much stimulation for me on a daily basis. Like I don't know that I want that. I think I really appreciate exactly what Greensboro has, which is a very nice, beautiful city with lots of opportunities if you're willing to see them and look for them. And yeah, it just provides a sort of it's not just about the convenience. There's also community here. There's also like it has actual culture and things that are of value. But for me personally, I do like the pace of the city and the ease of it. It's that's important to me to have. So there's an astounding amount of creative talent here that I think people we must all just be super introvert artists because it's not always obvious that that's the case, but I think that's changing a little bit. Like I just think of I know so many people here that are just extremely talented and I'm glad they're here and I think it's good for us to stay here and to put our talents to use in a place where they might actually make an impact or they'll make a bigger impact than they would in a place like New York or some large city where you know like it's overkill at that point. I mean it's just so saturated with every kind and level of creative everything to the point where it's just well, I don't even know what it means anymore, whereas here you know, we can make a difference. People you know I don't know, yeah, I like feeling connected to that community and like I know what's going on and like yeah, like there's a place for me here and yeah, I'm not fighting for every I'm not fighting 100,000 people for the exact same couple of opportunities. Yeah, I don't see how that doesn't seem fun to me. But I am not. I feel like right this minute, it's December right now, and this year has been extremely productive. I don't think I've ever been busier than this year. So it's funny, like right now, I'm not actively working on a project right this second, which actually feels really nice. I undertook two very challenging personal projects this year. One was I drew a plant every day for 100 days, so 100 plant illustrations, which might not sound like a big deal, but we're talking like 4 hours a piece every single day for 100 days on top of whatever else I was doing. You know, that was a personal project that I felt like had commercial potential. So I was trying to the extent that I could, you know, work smarter, not harder. So I did that, and then just a bunch of other personal projects, and had some really great client projects to do, like with pattern design. I was working with this eco-friendly wrapping paper company that I've worked with before, and it's always great to work with her. And then that some of those designs ended up being picked up by like Urban Outfitters and some places that I didn't expect to kind of like, I'm like, that's really cool. It's cool to see the work in, you know, these brands that you're like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool to have my work in these places? And it is always nice, but it doesn't happen all that often. Usually, it's not quite as glamorous as like, oh, Urban Outfitters has picked up my product. So that was a really fun project that happened this year, and I guess I am kind of finishing up a project with some clients who make fancy dog beds, and they actually lived in Winston Salem, but they now live in Denver. So working with them has been really fun because they both of these clients, and this is it gets easier as I get you know deeper into my career, but it's fun to have clients that want to work with me specifically because of the things that I do well and because of the like the way that I relate to them. Like I'm very direct with my clients. I don't sugarcoat things. I want to help them bring their vision to life, but I don't want to yeah, like I want it to be a collaborative process, and I want them to trust me. So I don't tell them things that, you know, I feel like are not true or that I cannot back up. And some people don't like that. They kind of just want you, they just kind of want a gun for hire. And that's fine. That has its place, but it's nice to be able to do more work for people who really value the expertise that I'm bringing to the table, and value my specific perspective and specific set of talents. And that's taken, I feel like, a while to really get to that point where that starts happening. But that feels good to know that people want to work with me specifically versus just like, oh, you exist, you're a warm body, you know, you can do this. No 2 days are alike, which is something I really enjoy about freelance life. It's also, it can be a drawback. And like when I was working in a sort of 9 to 5 office job as a designer, I constantly was railing against that, the structure and the schedule, and you know, oh, this is a prison. Not really, but certainly pushing against. I didn't like that structure being imposed on me, and then um, when it's missing, like I still have to impose some kind of structure on myself if I want to get anything done that I said I needed to get done. So there is my income, and my work is, it's a patchwork. I might be working on illustrations that I'm doing with the intention to sell or license them to a company. So they're fun, but also they need to be sort of trend based, they need to be relevant, they need to be sellable. So that's work that's fun, but it's also work that requires research, and it's not personal and it's not for me. Then I might be working on a website or a logo, which are more standard types of, you know, people I think are fairly familiar with what a logo or a website is. And um, so that kind of work is a little more straightforward. It's really a matter of like, what problem do we need to solve for you? Which I kind of like those projects because they're not as open ended as the other ones. They give me a chance to be a little bit more cerebral about what I'm doing and to like problem solve and think. So I like that kind of work. And then I have a sort of a more personal art practice that might inform my commercial art practice. And so I've got a number of things going on always at once that they all inform each other. But sometimes, you know, I didn't invent productive procrastination, but I do think I may have perfected it. And so whatever I'm supposed to be doing, I'm working on whatever that isn't, but at least it's still work. And at least it's, hopefully it's for something, it's serving a purpose. And, you know, I also build in a lot of time for play. That's really important to me, which is probably why, you know, I'm not as maybe financially successful as some people could be. There is money to be made, but for me, it's so much more important to spend my time doing what I enjoy. And I promised myself that I would not take on all the risk and all the uncertainty of freelance life and also impose the same, like, uh, some of the same drawbacks of having a 9 to 5. There's no sense in having worst of both worlds. And so I take on this risk, I take on this uncertainty, and in exchange for that, I make sure that I build in time to do what's fun and enjoyable for me. Because otherwise, this is silly. You know, then I need to go and just get a normal job, so I don't have to be constantly, you know, worried about so many things at once. But my my days, again, they never look the same. I try to block my time out so that I'm working on, like, in large chunks. I'm able to focus and dig into the work, but that's not always possible. And sometimes I just have to react to, you know, what a client has asked for, or oh, a new project has come up, or so there's a lot of unpredictability, but I enjoy that. I think you know, I'm not sure that it's for the best. I just like it. So the fact that I like it doesn't mean that it's a great way to work, but like I enjoy that, the sort of a little bit of chaos that's there. Sometimes I try to be more structured and try to have some logic to my day or whatever, but that never sticks for long. So um, yeah, like I could be drawing with little birds on my shoulders chirping, but more than likely I am answering emails or um, trying to figure out why Squarespace isn't behaving, or you know, just all the things that everyone has to do all the time that isn't, like, all the unfun stuff, and then the fun stuff is like 20% of the time. So you know, you have to really be disciplined when you are your own boss, whatever that even means. Um, all that means is that you are the boss and the employee, and you might discover that you are a terrible boss and a terrible employee, which is the case for me. I mean, I'm an overbearing boss and a very insubordinate employee, so it's just like really, it's the worst of both worlds. But I have no choice but to try to wrangle myself and get myself in as ready of a position as I can, because without someone telling me what to do and when to do it, if I disappoint my clients or if I disappoint myself, if it's a personal project, I mean, that I don't want to contend with, so it's that knowing that there will be consequences that are, I don't want to have those consequences. So that kind of somewhat keeps me in line. Already, I was already kind of living in a state of self-imposed lockdown. I realized after the pandemic hit that like for the past 5 years, I've been freelance, and so I've worked from home, and it was a rough transition, but I chose to transition into that, and so I was very interested in making it work for me. So I feel, a lot of sympathy for folks who've had that forced on them, because that's not the same thing. For me, I want to be alone at home with no one around to talk to. I can go for weeks without meaningful human contact. That's just, I'm a textbook introvert, but again, I chose that life and it works for me. It's not for everyone. So it's been a very strange year for everyone, and it's been a devastating year for some people. But for me, like I've just been doing what I've always done, which is to hang out in my house all by myself and make work. And I'm also used to uncertainty. I'm a freelance artist and illustrator and designer, so everything I do is there's always a cloud of uncertainty over everything, and I've just become used to that over the past 5 years. I don't even really notice it anymore. But again, to have that thrust on you out of nowhere, that's really awful. But for me, I'm just like, yeah, this is just my life, So for me, it's not different. It's just yeah. So that's been a strange thing to process, is like how I was unintentionally in such a really a good position for a global pandemic, which is an odd thing to have to think about and to say, but like my life is just already well suited for the adjustments we've all had to make. So there's like an odd sort of survivor's guilt almost for the fact that when people are like, well, how are you, or how has this year been? I'm like, well, for me personally, it hasn't been that different. But also I've made a lot of like when times were good, when we weren't in a pandemic, I was living a life that I think might have been a bit not suited for everyone, and I've made sacrifices, and I do still have to make sacrifices to make this lifestyle work. So yeah, I don't know, it's strange to have that pendulum swing where all of a sudden everyone has to have my lifestyle, whether they want it or not. There are so many things I could list, but the biggest answer to what is hard about making art is staving off just the constant flood of ideas. That is the largest by a galaxy's length struggle that I have as an artist. Is just even leaving, especially because I work in an industry that is called surface design, but really it's just patterns or illustrations that go on products. So that's basically everything. So like leaving my house becomes this overwhelming onslaught of absolutely anything that I can see with my eyeballs is potential inspiration or potential like raw material to make work. And I don't want to sound like, oh, poor me, but some days truly I wish I could turn it off. It gets sometimes it's too much. It's like I just want to leave my house and not be pulled into this state, this work mode, or this like wanting to be in a sort of deep focus or flow state where I can make work. And it's like, that's not accessible to me right now. I'm just trying to get groceries. Or you go get groceries and you're just like looking at all the packaging instead of, thinking about what you need to eat for dinner. And so sometimes there's a level of obsessiveness about um, the work that I do for me personally. Like I love it so much, but also it's like boundaries and like setting those boundaries just for the sake of, yeah, like being able to be a well-rounded person who has friends and eats food that they meant to buy at the store and not just stuff they bought because the packaging was fun to look at. So like I think far and away just trying to manage the influx of visual information and just visual bombardment that most people who are alive right now are experiencing that. But I think it doesn't mean as much if your job isn't if you're not a visual artist, then it's like sort of washing over you in the way that when I listen to music or if I'm reading a novel, like it's not arousing me emotionally. I'm not, or like not in a way that it's not intended to. Like it's something I enjoy. I'm not thinking about how did this get made, or like, oh, I should I make something like that, or just all the many questions that come up when I see something that resonates with me visually, it's never just that. It's always been connected to that, you know, part of my career and that just part of who I am that is always making and always doing. So yeah, it gets a little exhausting sometimes, but it's a good problem to have, I suppose. I do my best to manage it. Oh man, that's a loaded and a complicated question. It's one I like to think about a lot when I really want to drive myself bonkers. But I think for me personally, like I think I wish for everyone some sort of art practice, whether it's visual art, music, or whatever. I wish everyone had that. I think everyone should feel entitled to that as a human being. The sort of act of creating is one of the things that makes us humans versus any other kind of animal. It's something that we do that's unique to our species, and I think that's important. It can help you connect to yourself. It can help you connect to others and process who you are, process the experiences in your life, just as a personal act that doesn't have to be shared with someone else, or you know, it's not a performance, you know, if you don't want it to be. I think it's a very powerful way of being in the world and a way of framing the world around you that I think can make you more open and resilient. Just the act of like seeing things, you know, in a more open and sort of, again, sort of with a sense of curiosity and with a sense of you know, not being so, I don't know, I guess just sort of abstract thinking and just having that freedom to express yourself in whatever medium and whatever manner feels fun and good and right. But then, like, as far as art and its relationship to society, I think its main role really is just it helps us, it's part of that like social fabric. It helps us connect to people that we may not even know, which might not sound like a big deal, but you know, making something that resonates with someone you've never met could make that person feel less alone, could make them feel more connected to the world, to themselves. It could make them think about something in a new way. So I think it absolutely serves a valuable function that is difficult to quantify, and it is easy, I think, to dismiss. It's easy to say that art is frivolous, or that, you know, it's not important. And I think there are a lot of people talking about art in a way that kind of does make you want to be like, you know what, this is dumb. But that's not true. And just because somebody talks about art, all of the arts, like in a way that makes them sound unimportant, that doesn't mean that they are unimportant. Um, but so yeah, I mean, it is a tricky question, and I think there's so many, art can mean so many different things, and art can serve so many different functions. But I think what's most compelling about it for me is that it does facilitate connection to ourselves and to the people around us, and that is important. Most, especially, like, it's always been important, but I think now more than ever, it feeling connected and acknowledging what we have in common and what we have, you know, what pulls us together versus what might divide us. I think, you know, that's something that matters as much as it ever has, if not more.